What's going on, guys? I'm Journey, back with a thoughts video. This time, Final Fantasy 13. This game is not really one on my high list, but it does serve to have some pretty okay features, and yeah, the soundtrack is pretty alright. It's not too bad. It's a really good. Let me change it. It's alright. It's okay. It's okay. Let me begin to tell you why. Well, first, the story within itself. You have a situation where you have uh, probably minds that have gone, let's just say, way too overboard with the things that they are looking to implement. For instance, talk about like the Fal'Cie and the LC, and the Fal'Cie being something like, let's say, Fallen Gods. Initially, if you look at the story itself, it's supposed to be you have the creator that nobody never sees, or nobody even knows what the heck look like, who creates these, let's say, sub gods, if you want to, called the Fal'Cie, and they want to technically destroy Cocoon to then summon the creator for their wish to either restart anew or whatever it is. So they give these LC focus to go out and do their bidding. And if they don't go out to do their bidding, then they turn into Seep, which are essentially monsters to forever roam the land. If they do go out and finish their stuff, then they turn into a crystal to be resurrected again anew. Something of that nature. During your journey, you'll tend to find that a lot of characters, specifically that stand out, is Zaz. The guy that you see who is literally shaking up and down because monsters are literally running around stomping the ground. But guy with the afro puff, yes, he has the best story. He's literally just a guy, a father who's looking to save his son. You have Lightning, who is the star of the show, who is no more than a female Cloud. I will give her props though, because she does open up a lot faster than what Cloud does. You have Snow. Why do a lot of Final Fantasy characters got names as elements? I don't know. But Snow is the headstrong, think last, think last, act first kind of character. Bad leader, bad leader. But that's what he does. But his heart is pure. You have Vanilla. Technically, her name is Vanille. I just call her Vanilla. She's the young girl who is. You find out what Hope is. Another character. We'll talk about Vanille for a second. You find out what the Hope. She is your. She's a perky, happy, soft-spoken, very young and innocent kind of girl. She also comes off, pretty mature, and she carries a lot of weight on her shoulders. You have Hope, who is the child who can't do a thing. Some guy who just literally can't do a thing. He's worthless, and he tends to be worthless throughout the journey. But they try to have him stand up to be that on his own too. But he's still just a little child at the end. But I'm quite sure there's people out there who like Hope, but I don't really care for his character. You have Fang, who is technically her name should suit the personality, but because there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes on in there, you kind of question how tough that she is, in my personal opinion. But she's a really fine looking character, and she seemed pretty cool too, so I don't mind her at all. Now, the whole purpose of this is Lightning's sister Sarah decides to go off somewhere, ends up getting caught in some situation. It comes out with an LC label. She gets turned into LC. She has a focus. So because she has a focus, and Cocoon is scared of the LC for their attempts to destroy Cocoon or all this other nature, it becomes this race against time, as you will, for Lightning and Snow, because Sarah is Snow's bride to be, to find Sarah and save her. Zaz is out to save his son. His son got caught up in something, became an LC2, out to find him. Vanilla Fang has this whole kind of situation kind of going on that ties into all this. And Hope just is a guy who just ends up as a victim to all the circumstances around him. He loses someone special to him. So with all this combination of characters together, they go off and they try to quote unquote do their thing and end up on a path to go and save Cocoon. That's Final Fantasy 13. The gameplay itself, though, it can be rewarding, it can be engaging, but for the most part, it is a chore. You start with a grid, so you have your crystallarium, and it has a bunch of crystals and kind of like think of it like a web. So you have a web or at least a line that goes to a node and then it branches out. And then you hold the X button to then move the line. The line moves and it's like a white, the line fills a white. And when it hits the crystal, it kind of sparkles a little bit with a lot more white. And it can hurt people with, like with certain particular sensitive eyes. Trust me, it can. The thing about it though is that the crystallarium will grow throughout your journey. So after you do like certain boss battles, and even at the end, it will grow a little bit. And then afterwards, you can still continue to grind and get more powerful, learn new skills, stuff like that. The issue that I have with it, certain particular skills that especially something like say dispel, like because something like dispel is supposed to remove status buffs, stuff of that nature. It does it, but it does it by one, which makes no sense. Then you have something like Dispelga, especially if it's given to, let's say, somebody else on your team who's not necessarily a debuffer or a buffer that can learn it. It ends up being a tech that you use to use tech points. Tech points you use to either do emergency heals, to do a summoning. There's a lot of things you could do with your tech points. Unfortunately, they don't fill that fast, so you can't be using them like that. And whereas something like Dispelga, in my opinion, should be an ability, not a tech, it comes off as really kind of sad, like to me, in my personal opinion. Like, even though if a character shouldn't be able to do it, it's still pretty cool that they can do it, and you can at least add it towards your lineup of, okay, I see what you got. All right, you're coming to my team, and it don't work that way. Why? Because when you get into battle, you control your leader. That's it. You can assign a leader after like 15 to 20 hours. You can assign your leader. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. So when your leader gets wrecked, the game is over. That's why there's a retry button. I'm very confident that's why there's a retry button. Because if an enemy targets, or a multitude of enemies target your leader, you technically can't get nuked right off the bat. You get nuked, you can be done because nobody can revive you. Game is over. You can't switch your leader in the middle of combat. You can only switch your leader outside of combat, which makes it even more disappointing because there is not, to me, strategy. I'm sorry, that is ridiculous. Will never accept something like that because it's just super ultra ridiculous, and it goes against everything as far as like having a party. If I'm going to be this character is going to be the only thing I can control, and if this character goes, why the heck should I care about the rest of them? Why the heck why the rest of them on my team? There's no point for it, in my personal opinion. Some people might actually like that challenge. I don't care for it, and I will still never care for it because it doesn't make me feel compelled to even want to care. Like at that point, when I go switch into, let's say, my medic team, I'm going to prioritize focusing and healing my main leader. Why? Because the game will be over otherwise. So why would I care about healing my tank first? It's just common sense. You know what I'm saying? Outside of that, you can set up your teams. As far as like their roles, that's called the partogram, I don't know if they pronounce it. Some sort of partogram, something like that. And so you can set up as a medic. If you want to, you could set it up as a tank. You could change them all to however you want to do it. There's commandos for direct damage dealing. There's ravagers for magic damage dealers. There's medics for healing your characters, raising, all that good stuff. There is a sentinel that's supposed to be your tank, supposed to provoke. It's supposed to put up your guard. There is Saboteur, which is a debuffer. Role is to debuff. So you're adding your D-Protect, your D-Shell, your Imperils, everything that you could think of, that's what their role is. Synergist is your buffer. Haste, Protect, Shell, let's see, Vigilance, which is supposed to help protect you from being interrupted during your actions. That's pretty much basically a new one I've seen. And there's a lot more that goes in it. There's a lot more that goes in it. So you can flip them and switch them however you want to set up to your team comp. Unfortunately, it's not the same as like Final Fantasy X. Whereas eventually they'll let you use the whole set for each character, but they don't learn the same things, and it's most definitely not within the same tree. So let's say my guy's Zaz. He specializes as being a synergist. So he's the first guy that learns haste. Haste is, if anybody knows haste in Final Fantasy, that's like automatic given, right? So that's my guy. But then Hope can also can also learn it, but he doesn't learn that until much later. And you can't necessarily flip the two because on their trees it's entirely different, and you have no control over it. So it's not Final Fantasy X if you was thinking it. It's not that at all. They all have something specific and specific to them alone. That's how this works. So it's not like it doesn't give you that full control. It doesn't give you that full confidence, because anytime, especially when you get to certain boss battles, enemies will go through this process. Think like FF12. You get to an enemy, and you drag them down to a certain percentage of health. Then they do these they do these buffs. These buffs per se, you can't dispel them, or if you could, the person that you need to have debuff it doesn't debuff for whatever reason unknown to me. I don't know how many times Vanille, she does do some debuffs. You know, she's part of the debuffs is supposed to be dispel. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, do dispel, girl. And she's just standing there and I'm like, you kidding me? And the answer should never be, well, maybe you set her as your leader and then you could control that, because now there's other things I want to do too. And if that's the case, let me switch who I need to be while I'm in the battle. Then like it's certain things that are limitations that doesn't make this experience better. So that's one of the reasons why I dislike it. This video was most definitely a little bit longer than some of the other ones I do, because I need to be very forthcoming with these things. So I do apologize. As I said, the music is okay. It's pretty fun. It's not bad. It's really okay. There's some tracks in there that are really wonderful. The main theme is really nice. I enjoy it. Outside of that, the main fallouts when it comes to this game is the gameplay experience and most definitely the story. And if anybody knows, one of the reasons why you come to Final Fantasy is because of the story. And that is out of this world, whatever. I know some people probably like this because, especially with the alien lines, your summons, they can transform. Obviously, they can transform into like some transformer stuff that's like vehicles, some mech stuff, but I don't care about that. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I don't care about that. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Zaz goes into like a race car, and you know, it's just some other stuff with a lot of other characters, and it's just like, don't care. But there are summonings in this game. They are featured. They're not necessarily mandatory. It's entirely up to you if you want to use them or not. As far as upgrading your weapons, you can upgrade your weapons. You will be able to fight enemies. You'll be able to get loot from your enemies. They upgrade at different variables, numbers, yada yada. You could also use certain low tier, let's say, loot to give yourself a max boost, and your max boost is like a multiplier. The highest you could go is a 3, for multiplier 3. Then you have something else that has a higher value to then throw into your gear, so that way you can give it even bigger boost. So you take some low value, you max it up to a boost of 3. Then you put in something with the highest value, and that will be a higher multiplier, so that way you can level up a little bit faster. There's something like that in there too. Your ultimate weapons are fine. Some stuff requires specific materials that you can put into. Some will cost really, really expensive to be able to get yourself the ultimate of the best gear. And some of that might not be available to you until post game. As long as you can understand that and get it, you might be able to have a better experience here. For me, this one is a super hard miss. Oh, before I even move on, there are submissions. You could do submissions. So there are Seath Stones that you could find within the world. Those Seath Stones are like, think of them as contracts, right? They're hits. You go in there. There's literally a battle that you fight. You accept the mission. You go run, find your marker. You kill it. Okay, you go. You're done. So there's a lot of them, man. I think there's over 50. I believe there is. The other thing is a bit not going to this game. This game does not open up until like 20 hours in. It is nothing but long pathways. And even if you think you have a branch, that branch ain't going nowhere but bringing you right back to the center. And even then, that branch ain't gonna be that far off. It's little that way throughout the whole game. For the most part, that's the way how I feel. There's one area that's super large and big. But for every other area, if you see you're going to see this often. It's a long space. A long space. And in between, well, in those spaces, there's gonna be monsters that's just gonna stand there. They're not gonna come to chase you when when their little caution things going over their head. They're just gonna stand there because you have to fight them because there's no way to get around them. Maybe sometimes you can, but it's very rare. So it's bad design. It's bad design. This is one of the worst Final Fantasies I've ever played. Final Fantasy IV, the after years, is literally, in my opinion, right now the worst. But there are some things you could take away here that can be good for you. But there's a lot more worse things you could take away from here that makes somebody want to be like, nah, I don't want to touch this. And yeah, this is one of those games. Especially when you get to the later stages, later bosses and stuff. It's horrible. Oh, don't let me get talked about when you're in battle and you switch to, all right, so let's say you have dirty fighting, which is, let's say, a commando, a saboteur, and maybe like a sentinel. Something like that. So somebody that provokes and then somebody else that debuffs, and then you got your person that's literally attacking. And then let's say you want to shift into, let's say you need to heal. So let's say you do some more healing based. Well, the characters go through a transition. It's an animation. And the camera zooms in and they go like this. And then somebody else might go like this. Or whatever they're doing, they still are susceptible to hits. You could get nuked just like that, just by switching. So it's a sad thing. You should have at least iframes if you're going to go through that. You should be able to have the option of turning that crap off entirely, but you don't. But hey, it's entirely up to you how you want to take your experience here with Final Fantasy 13. I'm just not a big fan of it. So yeah, that's my thoughts. It's a pretty long thoughts video, and I felt as though it was good to get it all out. Mad love to you guys. I hope you found a way to find, if not this one, something else, and and enjoy it. Thank you for being around. Real talk. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And I hope to catch y'all guys in the next one. Till then, take care.